Hello. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you live. This is Yo. Usually I just upload my Mythic Plus videos or recordings, but my most recent Halls of Valor, I somehow managed to not record any audio for the night. So instead, I think I am going to do like a little commentary, give some tips and tricks, some insight into what I'm thinking over the course of the key. So without further ado, let's go. So starting off, we're going to be doing this triple pull. It's fortified. We're going to be lusting. We kind of have a plan for how we're going to be managing the Thundercallers. I'm in call with our Death Knight, our Priest, and our Warrior. We're pugging this Druid. And the biggest things you want to focus on for this pack is making sure both of those Thundercallers get kicked and that you don't stand in front of the dragon. You can see I got both of those circles from the Thundercallers. Those are really deadly. They hit you pretty hard, and if you get hit by a Thunderous Bolt at the same time, you're going to likely die depending on your key level. So all of them I'm trying to use defensives. The first one I turtled. The second one I used my wall or my 40% damage reduction. And then the third one that I got, the mob actually died before I actually got hit, so I got kind of lucky. This is Spiteful Week, so you can see that we've got all these little shades running at us, so we're trying to stay away from those. Our comp is actually fairly interesting. Not only am I playing Survival Hunter, but our Healer Priest is a Holy Priest, and our Death Knight is a Frost Death Knight, so we're really kind of memeing it up by playing really bad specs for Mythic Plus, or I guess unpopular specs, not necessarily bad. Himdahl is a pretty boring fight, in my opinion. He only does damage to you in one way, as long as you don't mess up, meaning that Horn of Valor. And then otherwise, we're just dodging those lightning beams and making sure we're not standing in the wrong spot. Obviously, you can't hear our call, but while the DPS are focusing on doing damage and dodging those lightning bolts, our tank is kind of calling out where he sees the dragons. Whenever he does that Horn of Valor cast, you can see it on my DBM bars. Right after that Horn of Valor is when those 3 drakes are going to come out. And there's 3 sections of this room that we're standing in, and each one of those sections is going to get hit once. So our tank is looking around. He's saying, okay, it's going to be in the very back or the very middle. And then once it gets hit, so once the middle drake comes in, we know the middle's never going to get hit again. And it's pretty safe to just stand here until the rest of it comes out. Other than that, Himdahl is a really pretty simple fight. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of my other setup that I've got in my UI and what add-ons or weak orders I'm using. First off, I just added my cursor to OBS, but my cursor from when I'm talking right now is going to be in the top right of the screen. It's going to be that large, kind of bluish looking cursor. It's inverted colors. My cursor in game is this circle. So I've got a weak aura that has a circle highlighting over my cursor, so that whenever I'm clicked down, I can tell where my cursor location is. So in case I have to target a mob, it's really easy for me to be like, okay, move my cursor over here to click on this mob. I always can kind of track where my mouse button is going to be over the course of the fight. My main UI weak auras is actually just pretty much Luxthos Hunter weak auras. Luxthos is a weak aura content maker, and he's made, as far as I'm aware, a weak aura package for every single spec in the game. So I just used that. I used his custom options to tweak it a little bit, and after that, I'm just kind of gaming with that. This next pack we're going to be doing is going to be a double pack. The big mobs we want to be watching out for are these Mystics and a Rune Carver on the top row. So there's 2 Mystics and there's a Rune Carver. So I focus the Mystic on the top. my Death Knight is saying that he's going to get every single cast of Holy Radiance on the first one, and I'm going to be getting every single cast on the new one, the triangle. And then other than that, Rune Carver, we're just kicking and using our regular kicks. The Mystics, they actually don't recast Holy Radiance if you stop it with any type of CC. So a stun, a disorient, anything like that will stop their Holy Radiance cast for about 15-20 seconds. So the way I manage to stop my Mystic that I've been assigned, first off, I use Scatter Shot for the first cast. My second cast is going to be Intimidation, and then that was the third cast that just went off, and that's another Scatter Shot. And then by then, if we're getting to the fourth cast of Holy Radiance, things are going pretty bad. We're not doing a lot of damage in that case. Other than that, the other mobs that we got to watch out for is just the Shield Maiden. She does a frontal called Mortal Hue, and it'll do a lot of damage, if not one-shot people at this level. So we're making sure to stay away from them as much as we can. So Star, that Mystic, almost did their Holy Radiance cast, but our Death Knight managed to grip her in, and that also counts as a stop. This isn't going to be the only pack. Our tank is also working on getting the next pack to the right into the group. But other than that, we're just kind of DPSing the Mystic and waiting for that to come in. Thundercallers, to me, are the scariest mob in this dungeon. They do their Thunderbolt cast very often, whenever they can, pretty much. And they also have that circle that can kind of combo you out. So the way that my group have worked to manage packs with like multiple Mystics and a Thundercaller is we kick the Thundercallers. We have a kick rotation for our melee, and then we use stops on the Mystics. So stops meaning Scatter Shot, Intimidation, Freezing Trap, Shockwave on the Warrior, Rips on the Death Knight, anything like that. Those are all stops. So that was Intimidation on that Mystic. You can see right here, I got lucky. I didn't have to take damage from that Thundercaller circle. If I did, I made sure to use my wall so I wouldn't have died to it, but I would have gotten chunked pretty hard. One thing to watch out for on that circle if you're a healer, or if you're a class that can dispel magic like Shadow Priest or some Warlock specs, when that circle hits you, you're going to get a nasty magic dot on you. You want to make sure to dispel that as far as possible to make sure that you're not just taking a lot of damage. If you're a healer, that's what you're going to want to watch out for. This next pack has a Thundercaller and a Rune Carver. So we're kind of doing a similar thing where we're kicking the Thundercaller, always kicking the Thundercaller when we can, and then using stops on the Rune Carver's etch. I actually got pretty unfortunate there where I got comboed by Shatterbolt and the Thunderbolt right there, so you can see how deadly that Thunderbolt cast can be if it goes off. Let's go back a couple seconds and see what happened. So right there, we had 3 people overlap kicks all at once. I guess we weren't talking very well in Discord at the moment, and both the Warrior and the Death Knight managed to overlap kicks on that Rune Carver. So we don't have any kicks going out here. And Shadowrune hits me, chunks me for quite a bit, maybe about a third of my health. And then that Thundercaller comes out, targets me with Thunderous Bolt as well. And I just don't notice in time. I don't use my Exil, I don't use a health pot, and I just drop. So that's why we're always trying to get, kick Thunderous Bolt, because it's a really nasty ability if it starts going off. So we've got, I just kicked that, and now that we're kind of got our mobs in area, we're calling out our kicks. So that was our Death Knight's kick. Our next kick is going to be the Warrior on the Thundercaller. And 3 melee players can completely lock down that mob. Rune Carvers, on the other hand, the etches, we're not as worried about etches because we know that we can take a tick of damage from the etch and we'll be able to live. So I'm kind of nearly about to be topped off. The one thing about Rune Carvers is if they don't finish their channel on etch, if you stop them before they finish their channel or their initial cast, they'll just start recasting it. They're not like Mystics where stopping them in the middle of the cast will stop that cast. So you can actually see this rune carver is about to cast Etch on our priest, Shenanigans, but it gets shockwaved. So some mobs will just stop that cast, but rune carvers don't. So it immediately starts recasting it on me. What hunters can do is you take a tick and then feign death it off. So bam, feign death, and it stops casting on me. You can also use a stop like scatter shot or like intimidation. As soon as you take that first tick of damage from rune carver, you'll be completely fine. The next kick on the Thundercaller is going to be Kira, our Death Knight. And then after that is going to be the Pillager, if we even have that. Both casters die, so we feel pretty good to start moving forward onto the next pack. What I did right there is I just focused on that Purifier. So this is my focus target up here. I have a focus kick and focus CC set up. I talked about that in another video of mine. And I actually get a sound notification from one of my weak orders whenever my whenever my focus target starts casting something. So I immediately know without even having to look at the cast bar, hey, my focus is casting. I can interrupt that. So this pack, other than that, it's just got a bunch of shield maidens. They've got their frontals, and we're just trying to make sure as melee to stand behind those because they will kill us really fast if we take those mortal hues. Tanks as well actually can outrange the casts from these shield maidens. They start casting it, but they don't move while they cast it. So you can wait for that cast and then just backpedal or run away from them and actually not take any damage from them. The mortal hues, you really don't want those to be stacking up either because that'll cause a healing reduction on you if you start taking stacks on it. And then your healer won't be able to keep you alive. This Valajar aspirant has two main abilities. It's got a jump and it's got a frontal beam. And the jump will actually always target ranged. And both of our ranged, what they're doing actually is they're using that little outlet on the stairs to line of sight the jump whenever it goes, whenever it targets them. And that makes it not jump at all. So our Boomy just now got targeted. He ran below the stairs, LOS'd the shield maiden, and then it just stayed in front of the pack for everyone to be able to damage. And then after that, it's really easy for the tank to aim the aspirant's frontal and for us to all stay safe. You can see right now that was just one mortal hue that hit our Death Knight and it nearly killed him. But they're really nasty when you start getting to some higher keys. We've actually got Lust coming up, and since it's fortified, these two mobs, Solstin and the Sanctify guy, they both scale with fortified. So we're lusting it to give our healer ample time to be able to heal us and to also try and kill it before it does too many Eye of the Storms. Our Death Knight threw down AMZ, and we're using defensives here. I actually blowed both my wall on the Spiteful beforehand. I'm going to use Turtle on the second one as well because I nearly die. Which is not really good for a hunter to use their defensives before Hyrja. I'm sure you guys are aware, Hyrja can be pretty scary as well as these mobs just because its Eye of the Storm is so threatening to us. Since we're running Holy Priest, her main defensive cooldown or her main external cooldown is called GS. I actually just got that. What GS does is it'll allow its target to receive more healing, but it also gives them like a cheat death. So if you die while having GS on you, you'll actually get healed to 60%. And I actually died during that last Eye of the Storm on that first guy on Solstin. So we don't have GS for this fight. I don't have Turtle for this fight, and I don't have Survival of the Fittest for this fight coming up. So it's about to be very scary going into Hyrja with no Lust and many defensives currently on cooldown. This mob is pretty simple. It's just got a kick. One or two melee players can lock it down pretty easily. The Sanctify, however, is a bit scary because the balls on that mob's Sanctify come out a lot faster than on Hyrja's Sanctify. Hyrja's Sanctify is pretty safe, easy to dodge, but if you're not paying attention, you can easily get one shot by that mob. So with Hyrja being such a scary boss, our tank actually does something called inverting it. Many low keys players, you'll see people just immediately pull it to the lightning phase and take that Eye of the Storm first. But what we do is now actually, he's a method tank, I believe. He put out a video on how to easily invert the boss. And so what you do is you pull it immediately to the light side, pull it to the middle after, and let it do a Sanctify in the middle. Then you run over to the lightning side and use Shield of Light to go back to the light side. And it sounds kind of complicated, but it's really pretty simple. And what that allows us for her to do is right now she has 8-9 stacks of her light buff, but she's casting her thunder ability. And as you'll see, she has inverted buffs, which makes it a lot easier for us to manage her damaging abilities, because now she's getting channeled thundering and she's doing her light abilities. So her light stacks are falling off and her thunder stacks are coming up. How I deal with Sanctify is her pattern is always going to be the same for the balls. It's kind of like a flower pattern. I like to just dodge the very first ball and then stand in the same spot, and that will pretty much nullify that mechanic. As you'll see in our comp, I am the only Lust class as a hunter, and we're not using drums because we have a hunter. But what I actually did for the very first Eye of the Storm is I switched my pet from a Lust pet to a defensive pet, and I actually managed to use the bear defensive on that first Eye of the Storm. This one Eye of the Storm just now, I used my Survival of the Fittest, and that allowed me to survive pretty easily with some extra heals and from exhilaration from during that channel. Unfortunately, we're actually doing quite a lot of damage to this boss, and we only have to deal with, I think, 2 Eye of the Storms overall. This is always kind of a boring run back. I think a Mind Soothe goes out, so it's pretty safe for us to run past that Sentinel. Mind Soothe is an ability from priests that reduces like the threat table or the threat aggro range on mobs. This next pull is going to have a Mystic and a Rune Carver. I believe I'm going to be, or no, our Death Knight called out that he was going to be stopping the Mystic and that we can focus on the Rune Carver. We also want to pull this pack forward so that we don't have that Sentinel behind us pat into us, because that would kind of suck. Sentinels are really nasty because they give a buff to other mobs where they can't be CC'd. And so if these casts are going out, the heal from the Mystic and the channels from the Rune Carver, we're just going to wipe. It's not going to be good at all. This marksman has a habit of just jumping out of the pack, so I kind of decide that while our other 2 classes are AoEing things down, I'm kind of like a single target specialist, so I'm going to single target this guy, sacrifice a little bit of my overall, and just make the pack go faster, actually, because the marksman dies faster. One thing that's really important to think about how you're damaging things is not what gives you the most overall, but what kills the pack the fastest. So sometimes that's actually going to be priority single target damage. We also make sure to kill those Spitefuls before going in this portal, because if you don't, they can teleport with you and start evade bugging and killing your team pretty sadly. We don't really have a good way to skip this Drake. We haven't been able to get our route super good for skipping the Drake. I know some groups do that. We just kill it. We just single target it down, and we grip a stag in to get a little bit of count at the very end. It's a pretty simple mob. The range just need to run away from its balls, and the melee just need to not stay in front of it. One thing that a lot of people might not be getting is PI, power infusion from priests. I'm fortunate enough to have our priest enjoy PIing me. I actually have a macro that whispers her just a PI command, and she's got a weak aura set up to be able to see whoever whispers her that. So it makes it really easy for her to just give me PI whenever I call for it. And I actually track her PI with a cooldown bar down here. So I can see when it's on cooldown, when it's coming up, and when it's available. So here I just use PI. I dodged this Ravenous Leap. I learned how to dodge Fenryr's Ravenous Leap using Harpoon from another survival player, from I think a Ragnaros survival player or an Azralan survival player. Very cool tech. You'll see it probably on the boss, if not on this mini boss. Lets you dodge a lot of damage because you don't have a bleed just doing a bunch of damage to you. Other classes or races such as Night Elves with Shadow Meld or Rogues, they can actually nullify these leaps by going invisible while Fenryr is midair. Fenryr's jumps are also completely deterministic depending on where you're standing. Fenryr always targets the furthest player from it at all times. So even when it has 4 targets on the actual boss fight or just these 2 targets, I'm disengaging out so I can be the furthest target so I can time my harpoon back in. We're also going to do another kind of little bit of Halls of Valor tech. I switched back to my Lust pet because Lust is coming off cooldown in about a minute. I don't want to waste the group's time. But there is a little fence post over to the right that our ranged players are going to stand on for these wolf packs. Because these wargs only target ranged players, they never jump on top of melee. And if you stand on that fence post, they have no path to jump on you. So it just becomes kind of like a tank and spake. Our tank just has to kill them or survive them, and we just have to kill them. Makes it a lot easier. So I've got coordinated assault I end up using on that pack. It does quite a bit of damage in AoE. Makes things a lot nicer. I see this shade is coming up, and I just intimidate it off the bat because I don't want anyone to have to deal with damage when we could be doing damage to the pack instead. If it targets a ranged, then they'll have to jump off the fence post, and then they can easily just die from a bunch of wargs jumping on them. So it makes it a lot easier to just get stunned for 5 seconds and hopefully die before it becomes an issue. And the reason we kill that shade is to get our healer out of combat so that she can start drinking before this boss fight. So our warrior is also kind of typing out to our pug that he's got intervene, which allows him to take melee attacks on another mob. And you'll see that allows us to just stand on the boss when many groups would otherwise be kiting. I don't get Ravenous Sleep on this first one, so I just run out of the group, make sure I can't get cleaved by them. And otherwise, we're just making sure to top ourselves off whenever that split soak goes out. Because it's not going to one-shot as long as we're all soaking it. And if we get topped off, then there's nothing to worry about. Ravenous Leap is about to come out. And so you'll see that I get targeted. I disengage into the cave to become the farthest one. And then I just harpoon back in. And then even though Fenryr jumped on top of me, I didn't get hit, which is awesome. So you can see it's doing Scent of Blood on the druid. Our warrior intervened that druid, and the druid doesn't have to move at all. We can all just keep DPSing. Other than that, it's a pretty simple boss. It becomes a lot easier if you have a rogue or a night elf or a mage because you can invis those jumps and then nobody takes damage at all. It's really cool. if you haven't seen it before. But otherwise, we just truck ahead. We don't die. We beat the boss. Up next, we've got this bear pack. This bear pack is very, very dangerous for tanks because the grizzly bears do a stacking debuff, crunch armor, which makes them take more and more damage. So our warrior has a bunch of cooldowns to be able to stand still and allow us to do damage while they're all grouped up. But then after that, they have to start tanking. Or they have to start kiting, rather. This is a pretty common pack you'll see in a lot of groups. Just pulling all 7 of these grizzly bears together. I don't know why the druid typhooned there. I also don't know how I got rending claws. I guess I took aggro or some weird thing happened, but the bear just decided to kill me. So we sent a B-res on top of me. Yes, let's go back and see what happened. See if we can pinpoint to that. We were kind of confused as to how that happened, what happened there. Ended up being completely fine. We had B-reses available. Yeah, the grizzly just targets me with rending claws. Very weird. So you can see our warrior is making sure he's running around using the movement speed buff from killing both Fenryr and Hyrja to just be out of melee range of those bears. So whenever they do their crunch armor casts, he just doesn't get hit by them. And we kill all these spitefuls to make sure that there's no issues with pulling extra mobs. The last little bit of count that we need before going into these kings are these bulls. And so these bulls kind of do 2 abilities mostly. The piercing horns is just some damage to the tank that they can tank. But then they also do their big swirly around them. And that is a lot scarier. That should one-shot most melee players if they get hit by it. Which kind of sucks. So we're actually calling out what stops we're going to be using. That time we overlapped Sleet and from the DK and Shockwave from the Warrior. But we're just saying, okay, I've got next, or I'll be able to get the next 2. I'll be able to get the next 2. I scattershot that one, and then I intimidate that one. And they start dying. And so once you hit 83.7, you can see that on my count tracker. That is all you need to finish the dungeon. The 4 kings at the very end are worth 44 count total. So we can just run to the end and be fine. The way we do that, I use camouflage, because that's just a good stealth to run past. But priests actually can use Mind Soothe on those 2 gate guards, and that just allows everyone to run past. You'll be able to see it on the minimap most likely, or see them just run past them. I guess not. Oh, our priest actually dies. She gets aggro from someone, and we have to take a res. Not a battle res, but just a regular res from the druid. So the rest of this dungeon's pretty standard. You've got the 4 kings, mostly single target / 2 target. Then you've got God King Skovald, of course, and then Odin to finish it off. Fairly common, we throw meat on just one of the bosses or one of the kings so that we can attack both of them at the same time. I don't know exactly how it works, but if you throw mead on one of the mobs and then pull the other, they'll start fighting, and then you'll be able to actually just get them in combat. The fastest way to clear this is actually to primarily single target the low health mob. So I'm just doing my single target rotation into Ranulf to get Ranulf dead as soon as possible. After that, I'm going to be killing Haldor as soon as possible. And once you kill the two low health mobs, you can target the high health mob. And that is technically going to be the fastest way to clear these 4 kings if you're doing 2 at the same time. It's a pretty easy encounter in terms of coordinating DPS. Each of these unruly yells are just on a single melee kicks timer. So we call out in Discord, yo, you've got Haldor. Well, I've got purple. Purple is my color, and I'm going to kick every single purple mob. The reason our tank ran out of there is because he was trying to get his sever stacks to drop off. I think he was getting pretty high, around 6 or 7 stacks, and he was taking quite a bit of damage. So that purple marker goes out again. I make it my focus target so that I can make sure to just focus kick whenever I hear that notification, a little bell sound for me. Some really useful things for your UI other than just a weak core tracking all your rotations. Trying to get a hold of some of your teammates' cooldowns, utility cooldowns primarily. So like if you've got a GS available, you can call out for it. Or their kicks, so you can call out, okay, I've got this next kick, then Kira, you get the next one. Can help quite a bit in coordinating groups if you've got people in a stack together in Discord. There's no super special tech for God King Skovald. It's kind of a boring fight in my opinion. It's pretty much just patchwork for us. You dodge the Fellblaze rush, use a defensive if you need to, and otherwise stand in the shield. Our tank likes to cast that Aegis of Agrimar fairly late. He was waiting until the Ragnarok was already in the air to start casting it, because that'll actually allow you to take an ability for free from the boss. So the Fellblaze rush went off on our priest, but she didn't take any initial damage from it. She just got the dot. The boss can also do its Savage Blade on the tank while the shield is active, and the tank just won't take any damage. You don't have to use the defensive on that. It's kind of a minor optimization, but it's, I guess, worth it technically. You don't lose anything for doing it. You just kind of get people a little bit nervous. It is really important to make sure that you're not splitting those Fellblaze rushes, because the dot can scale to be hitting pretty hard if it's on multiple people and your healer might not be able to catch up. Other than that, I'm just trying to do as much single target damage as I can. I'm not really padding on the Fell Flames because I don't gain any funnel from it. I believe boomies actually gain priority damage in single target, so I end up sending CA here, but I'm mostly just trying to do damage to Skovald. I actually noticed that PI was up from our priest, but I wanted to make sure that we had it for the burn phase on the next boss on Odin. So I don't call for it here. And then here I'm typing out hold, stop, no one's doing damage, because if God King Skovald is casting Ragnarok and he dies, the Aegis of Agramar will go away, but Ragnarok will not. So the entire team will just die, pretty much. So we kind of joke around during the RP, saying like, man, thanks for not killing it there. We were calling it in Discord, but I wanted to make sure that the druid could see. And I get a nice little compliment from the druid on my boss damage there, 12 million to Skovald. And most of it was not bad. I guess there was that little bit of coordinated assault padding, but other than that, there's not a lot of special tech on Odin either. You just want to make sure that you've got defensives available for the runic brands. You'll take a pretty nasty dot. Our group also likes to kind of just stand in this area and get the initial spears outside of the center in hopes of making that first runic brand pretty easy and not dangerous. I put intimidation on the obliterator to make sure that it can't cast surge while we're all not in melee range. We just kill it. After killing the ad, we go back to the center, kind of centralize the group so that we can all take a quick path to whatever rune we get. I put Healing Pot, Exil, and Survival of the Fittest on that first runic brand because I was not able to find my rune super fast. And I wanted to make sure I wouldn't die. When we send Lust, I get PI, I throw a DPS pot on it, throw CA on it, try and do as much damage as possible in this first runic brand. Or, yeah, on the first runic brand. Make sure to get the kick on the obliterator. Shockwave it. Make sure it doesn't get any casts off. Shatter Spear comes out, and that actually, you could see my group went from full health to nearly not full health. So since I know I don't have any healing abilities, I make sure to turtle it so that I don't have low health going into a runic brand. Unfortunately, I'm kind of slow running away from these portals, trying to clear Thundering, and I end up dying during the runic brand. You can see how much damage that ability does. I'm sure I could have played it a little bit better and survived it while clearing Thundering. We could have cleared Thundering a bit earlier, but it is what it is. We send a B-res on me, then get back up. Since I've got Exil, I can just Exil that back up and not take damage or not die to that one shot. Radiant Tempest comes out again. We run out. I put Intimidation on the obliterator, harpoon back in, make sure that we've got it kicked, and then end up killing the boss. And that's the key. We are super happy to have beaten this 24 Halls of Valor. We have lost to many, many Halls of Valors very recently, so this was a really, really big win for us. We're bogging out in Discord, as you might say. Anyways, that was kind of a little bit of a commentary, probably rambling quite a little bit. Just some of my thoughts on this recap of this dungeon. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys weren't too bored of my talking. And otherwise, let me know if you'd like to see some more of this in the future. I'm always open to suggestions, YouTube comments. I try to respond to people pretty quickly as they ask questions. So yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, wonderful rest of your night. And otherwise, hope you guys have a good one. Thanks for watching.